Hello and welcome. This is Phoenix Unleashed, episode 18. I am your host, Shipper Henry. I am in Starbucks, where sometimes it's just easier for me to work here. So I hope there won't be too much background noise. And if there is, it's unlikely to last that long. So today we're going to talk about the awakening, not just awakening, but the awakening. And if there are questions, I do have a couple by email. But if there are questions that come up, feel free to ask, and we'll see what we have time for. Before I get started, I want to invite you to participate. If you want a live interactive training, I'm offering a free 3-hour workshop this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So there should be a link on the Facebook. There might not be a link to join on the YouTube. I'll be emailing about this also. So feel free to sign up and reserve your spot there. It's going to be on Zoom, so you have to actually be registered to participate. And I highly recommend it. If you are not on my list, my mailing list, you can sign up at the Gate of Unity. That is linked in the banner here, www.gateofunity.com. You can get free access to a number of my classes, to an e-course that is pretty cool. And in general, you'll be on my waiting list, my email list. So you'll be finding out. You'll be among the first to find out about everything that I'm doing. So I invite you to do that as well. I'll try to remember it to mention it again at the end of this little live stream. So again, if you have questions or if you have comments, this is an opportunity to let me know. If you're on YouTube, my husband is monitoring the questions. So if there are questions that I don't see, he'll send them to me. I'm not looking at Facebook or YouTube. So feel free to ask, depending on the depth of the question. We may not have time for many, but this is a great opportunity. I want to hear from you. And in general, the question, this is a big secret. Actually, it's part of awakening, that asking questions, literally asking questions that you, even when you don't know the answer and have no access to the answer, it actually opens the mind, the higher part of the mind, the right brain, known in Kabbalah as Chachma. It's like a satellite receiver, and when you ask a question, it's automatically programmed to search and to receive. So part of what's happening here, and I'll talk about this momentarily, part of what's happening here in our world, as well as in my work and in all of our individual lives, is we are opening to the higher mind. So I don't know, depending on your politics, depending on your media, depending on your language, you may have heard the term the Great Awakening. So we have the Great Reset on one side and the Great Awakening on the other side. And I want to put forward that the Great Awakening, whether you use that term or not, awakening in general is what it's all about. But what are we awakening to? What does it mean to awaken? So the Torah often describes the souls as asleep. And God often has dialogue with the souls and bodies. It's reflected in Psalms and so forth. My sleeping ones, why, wake up, wake from your slumber. And what's sleeping? So there are different levels of us that are sleeping. Our mind can be checked out, right? Our hearts can be shut down. I mean, we all are to a certain degree, but without question, our bodies can be kind of disengaged, and without question, our souls, from the very beginning, from by the nature of our being, were created with most of our souls not accessible to our personality, to our human self. The soul, there are there are 5 levels of the soul. 3 of them are basically ready in the case of tremendous effort and learning on our part, are ready to flow into the body. This is a process. Those parts are the neshama, the consciousness that can go into the brain, the ruach that can go into the heart, the emotional aspect of the soul, and then the nefesh is always in the body. That's the life force. But how much is it flowing? How much is it flowing? Because we are taught, and this is obvious, that when you're fully embodied, when the soul's fully invested in every aspect of the body, there's health. When the soul's out of the body, what happens? When the soul leaves the body, which hopefully we'll be able to be among the first to get to the other side of consciousness without the soul having to leave the body, but simply will renew and recreate the body as it's doing anyway at every moment. But when the soul leaves the body doesn't live anymore, right? So the body's life force is coming from the soul's life force on this bottom level. But then there are the 2 higher levels that are known as the Chaya and the Yechida. The Yechida literally comes from Yachid, which is totally united. never separated from its divine source. And that is at the core of every one of us, at the deep core of every one of us. So when we talk about awakening, we're literally not just opening our consciousness, not just starting to ask deeper questions and listen for the answers, not just to break through the boundaries of what we think we know and our comfort zone on every level, but literally to start to catalyze and make access for deeper levels of our own souls, those deeper levels of consciousness, the heartfelt emotions, and even beyond that, God consciousness, divine consciousness. So that's really what awakening is about. And I invite you to take the position to make the assumption, because it's the truth, that everything that happens in your life and in our world, without any exception whatsoever, is custom created on behalf of your growth and transformation, your awakening. So when we talk about, here I'm assuming we're all believers on some level or another, however you translate that and whatever your background might be, we all believe that there's something higher that's within us and beyond us, again, whether we feel it or not and how we language it. But we're not meant just to believe that. That's not our mission. Our mission here is not just to believe. Our mission is to actually internalize to the point where the brain is rewired to see beyond the boundaries of the physical. And I've lately been asking people, and when I speak to groups, I'm asking people a lot, who here has experienced something new in your abilities or in your awareness that you didn't experience before? Maybe it's seeing energy, maybe it's the ability to feel things or to intuit things. It can be anything. But I'd love to see if you are experiencing anything like that, type yes in the chat wherever you are, or let me know what it is that you're experiencing. Because this is a phenomenon. There is a great awakening happening. And what does that mean? More soul being embodied in our minds, in our hearts, and in every cell of our being. Again, when your soul is completely embodied, meaning brought online, you cannot be ill. And in general, talking about death, not that we were talking about death, but talking about death, what is the purpose of death? The purpose of death is to clean the slate, to restore our personality, ego based, traumatized consciousness to pure awareness, to give us the lessons that we weren't able to learn, to allow us to process those, and in a general sense to allow us to experience, to free us from this third density, three-dimensional, whatever you call it, 3D consciousness, so that we can experience a much, 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 much higher, deeper, sublime level of consciousness. But so death always includes that. That's always. And yes, reward and punishment, that's not a big deal. When you get to the deeper depths of the mystical Torah, that's not the point at all. The point is everyone's going to get there. How are we going to get there? What's it going to take to get there? The target is that we live in upgraded bodies, in a very upgraded physical world, because that's God's core desire, to be revealed in you and through you in this world. Obviously, it's going to look different and feel different and function differently, and so will you. But every soul is going to come back. Every soul of a decent person is coming back into that upgraded body of that person, because the body is from a higher source than the soul. The body can experience God in an intimate way, whereas the soul can experience God's light, and it does, and that's why the soul is like a higher spiritual, awareness, vibration, but the body can experience God's essence. And so the soul and body together can gain incredible intimacy with God. And that's really the purpose of all of this. That's what's happening. So awakening, don't expect to stay the same and to move into this new level of reality. That is not possible. That's not the point. That's not the destiny. Don't expect that a giant hand is going to come out. This did happen in Egypt, but it happened after. Imagine living through the 10 plagues. Imagine seeing the supernatural, seeing the barriers broken in such incredible ways. Like, it wasn't just hail that fell in the 10 plagues, and Passover was coming up. The hail was made of fire inside of the ice. The frogs, the plague of frogs, when somebody hit a frog to kill it, the frog broke into multiple frogs. The water turning to blood. This happened in all of the water inside the house as well as outside. These are supernatural things. They blow the mind. And that was necessary. That was a necessary prelude, both for the Egyptians themselves to realize that God is higher than the gods, their gods, but also for the people of Israel. It was necessary to realize that the same thing, and to break apart that limiting identity and that limiting belief system that is keeping us all asleep. Wake up. It's time to wake up. We have to wake up. In this case, though, that was the first redemption, the prototype for redemptions, and the beginning of this one cosmic evolutionary redemption process that is actually destined. It's predicted that it will happen in this month of Nisan, the month of miracles. It's connected with Pesach, with Passover, but it can happen at any time, in any way. But what has to happen is that the limits of our physicalized consciousness and our somatic emotions and our reactive hearts and our disembodied, our souls that are our bodies that are lacking. So the soul is not moving. We have blockages in our body. There are many places that energy, trapped emotions cause stuck energy that keeps even the nefesh, the lowest level of the soul, the life force level, from flowing through that part. You know this because if you lie on your hand when you're sleeping, you wake up and your hand. Sometimes it's a really, really creepy, weird feeling, but sometimes we wake up and the hand, we can't feel it. How come? Because the soul, this life force of the nefesh, is carried in the blood. It says Adam hu nefesh, the blood is the soul, and it communicates, it gives the soul's sensing powers and moving powers to the hand. So imagine if there were no blockages. Imagine if your soul could flow freely through your body, and if the emotions of your soul, those creative emotions like love and truth and connection and purity and joy and beauty, could be completely revealed in your heart. What if your mind could see what God sees? Because that's ultimately our destiny. And it is a process, and it's not all up to us. But to prepare for it, to create the connections, to activate the desire, to align ourselves with that is our job. And if somebody asked me on Facebook, why are things so hard? I don't like to justify things being so hard because I'm a very big advocate for things not being so hard. And at the same time, no, period, in a sentence, at the same time, I'm not entirely in charge. If I were, I might see it differently. But we are in a process. If we're in a process where ultimately the divinity, our souls and our creator, our source, and all the incredibly beautiful things about all of that, the amazing, wondrous things about all that, have to actually be revealed within our human bodies. If we want to stay here, if we want to be alive, then we have to wake up. It's non-optional. And sometimes, when things are really good and they stay the same and they're predictable, it's really easy to get complacent. It's really easy to be lulled into a slumber. And that is the opposite of where we have to go. So we are in a redemption process, but crucial to it, foundational to it, inescapable foundation of it is waking up. So you're not going to be allowed to stay the same and be rescued from everything. You are going to be encouraged to lean into your own miraculous potential, which I will be talking a lot about on Thursday. If you weren't here at the beginning, I'm mentioning again below this video. Either is or will be a link to sign up for free for a 3-hour transformational workshop that I'm going to be doing with you if you choose to come. That is really about moving from nature to miracles, but it's beyond the scope of today. And I do want to get to some questions first. In any case, you have to let things move you. You have to know that the deeper parts of you, the parts that you know are there, but you can't quite get access to, and the parts that you have no clue are there, but they are. Those things need to wake up inside of your own personal being. So, how does that happen? Let things that are happening in the world move you. Allow everything to trigger you into a deeper connection with self, a deeper connection with source, with God. Ask yourself daily, am I the victim of my story or am I the hero of it? Because being the hero means you play a transformational role. You're here to transform darkness to light. You're here to transform slumber to awakening, unconsciousness or distracted consciousness to alert presence and deeper divine consciousness. It also happens through learning the mystical Torah. It is impossible to um, internalize, to have access to and internalize the level of divine wisdom that we are all moving toward without the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint for creation. The Torah is for everyone. And it's time for us to interact with it. Because without that, without consciousness, belief isn't going to get us there, because it's about us changing. But without belief and without making an active, ongoing process of connecting more and more and more to divine consciousness from the source in the blueprint, we also can't get there. Does everybody have to be doing that and be at a certain level of that for us to move out of this phase of our evolutionary process, which is so difficult, into the next one, which is going to be magnificent, wondrous, and glorious redemption? No, not everybody, but enough people with enough depth. And what do you want? Who do you want to be in the matter? You were born in this time for a reason. You were born for this reason. And are you going to step into it or not? How are you going to step into it if yes? And that's really the question. And that's what awakening is all about. So I did say questions, and I don't want to make this too long. So, okay, the role. What is the role of a Noahide in the Great Awakening? We are. I can't read this. Something in praying, longing probably, and praying daily for the Messiah, for Mashiach. So, what is a Noahide? First of all, a Noahide is a phenomenon. It's a prophetic phenomenon that we see in front of our eyes. It is the phenomenon of let's put it this way: for thousands of years, why are the Jewish people all over the world? Because the temple was destroyed and the Jews were sent into exile. It happened twice. The first time was by Nebuchadnezzar in the Babylonian exile. He destroyed the first temple, but after 70 years, the people were allowed to return. Not all of them did, but they were allowed to return, and the temple was rebuilt. And that temple existed for a few hundred years. It was a source of prayer for all peoples, nations of the world from everywhere, brought sacrifices and donations to the temple, because that was the source of peace, and that was the source of a blessing for everyone. And then the Romans came and destroyed that temple, burned Jerusalem, and people were sent into exile. It's coming up on 2,000 years now. So what is the point of all of that? The point of that is to do the mission, to keep the Torah, to keep the mitzvot, the divine commandments, in the language of every nation of the world, in the culture of every nation of the world, and under, unfortunately, tragically, obscenely tragically, in every generation, under a level of persecution and difficulty, because that shows the dominance of the soul and the divine commandments and the divine connection over every possible thing that could be thrown at it. I don't want to, this isn't the topic, so I just want to mention, during those 2,000 years, one of the big features of exile of the Jewish people was that was being persecuted, tortured, or even killed for learning Torah, and keeping Torah. And anybody who knows any history, okay, we don't have to go that far back. It happened in every generation pretty much, but in one place or another. But in the Holocaust, not even in looking beyond the Holocaust, even let's say 30 years ago in Soviet Russia, you could be put into Siberia for keeping Shabbat, or for not working on Shabbat, or for having Jewish objects, or keeping any of the laws. So it wasn't that long ago. And actually, Maimonides says that the first phase of redemption, how do you recognize it? This is like ancient text. How do you recognize it? That the Jews are free to learn and practice Torah everywhere in the world. So we're there, you guys. We're there. We're in what's called Yemos HaMashiach, the Messianic era, the days of Mashiach, according to Torah law, codified a long time ago. There are future, further phases, and we're connected with awakening and so forth. But we're already in that stage. But then what's the next thing that happens? So you can see that it was a tremendous challenge for a Jewish person to keep Torah in many, not in every era, not in every place, but in many eras, in every era, in many places. Now what's happening? Now there's a thirst, and this is direct from prophecy. There is a hunger and thirst. It says I will show there will be a hunger and thirst in the land. A thirst not for a hunger and thirst, not for food and for drink, but for the word of God. And some of what is a Noahide? A Noahide is a person who is not Jewish, who was not born to the Torah tradition, who is not part of that lineage, and yet who feels some resonance, some deep calling, some passionate urging, and that could be a process to recognize, but feels the call for a deeper truth and recognizes it in Torah. I cannot tell you how many times people have said to me, not Jewish people, have said to me, I'm not Jewish, but when I hear you speak Hebrew, it just does something to me. I feel it in my body. Or, I found a book in my grandmother's drawer after she passed away with letters on it, and I took it to a friend and they said it was Hebrew, and I just feel there's something here that is so intense and I don't know what it is and I don't know why. Let me tell you, you are a fulfillment of prophecy. This is supposed to happen. This is happening. So a Noahide is somebody who's committed to keep the Torah is for everyone, like I said, and Torah law is for everyone, but it's not the same for everyone. The Jews took on a very intense contract that not everybody else has to take on. But everybody has commandments. Those commandments are from God, are designed to create a sustainable, inhabitable, and ultimately divine world. And the codification of those commandments that are for all of humanity, they were given to all of the descendants of Noah. Remember Noah and the ark? So who are the descendants of Noah? That's why it's called Noahide. The descendants of Noah are the people who survived the flood. Who survived the flood? Noah and his descendants and some of the animals, and that's it. So everybody who's alive today is a descendant of Noah. So what are those seven? There's seven commandments that have many details. It's really more like I've heard the word 30 and I've heard 100. Like Jewish law, it has a lot of details, the how-tos and the aspects and the branches. But the seven core commandments, if somebody's committed to follow those, they are called. It's not, this language isn't from the Torah, by the way. It's contemporary because it was created to serve the movement, because the movement is new. Instead of being persecuted for learning Torah, now we're being begged to teach Torah. And it's a little bit of a transition for a lot of Jews. You can imagine, like, what do you mean? You just tortured me. You just burned me at the stake. Now you want to learn from me? I should trust you? But, we're getting there. We're getting there. Give us a little slack. Let us know who you really are and what your feelings really are. So Noahide, really, B'nai Noah, Ben Noah, is a descendant of Noah. That applies to every living human being. So a Noahide is just somebody that in our current Torah vernacular, it means somebody who's committed to study and keep those seven laws and their derivations, but it doesn't have to end there. So the question is, what is the role of a Noahide in the Great Awakening? A Noahide is here to create a sustainable, inhabitable world by not worshiping idols and by all of the other laws that are given by God that will allow man to get along with man, that will allow man to grow. We're all here to grow. None of us are here to stay stagnant. That's not possible. Like I said before, you have to let things move. It's a must. You're not going to get out of here the way you came in. It's not happening. Hopefully you'll get out a lot better. That's a part of choice. In large part, that's a choice. So what is the role? You as a person who is committed, a person who recognizes the call, and that's free choice. Like as a Jew, many Jews, most Jews are not in the world today, are not keeping the commandments. Maybe don't even know what they are. Maybe don't even know there is such a thing. Maybe don't even believe in God like I didn't used to. But I did know there was a Torah because my grandparents were, the way I was raised culturally in my family. But I didn't know any of this, and I didn't believe it. So that's a story for another time. But as a person who's not born in the Jewish faith, or even who is born in the Jewish faith, needs to awaken. It doesn't matter. You're awakening to the same mission, different commandments. Some of them are the same and some of them are different. But ultimately, we're all on the same train. We're all going to the same place. So Noahide is the basic. It's like actually in the old times when the temple was in existence, when there was a Torah government in the land of Israel, it was actually incumbent upon that government to force everyone to keep those seven laws. And if they didn't, they were actually supposed to be killed. But that's never happening again. We're not going there. That was the past, not the future. But what we are still obligated to do is to encourage people to keep these laws and to understand the laws. And that's just, again, the starting point. That just means that you step through the gate. But what happens when you're in the gate? And this is where I want to go into the question more. Once you're inside that gate, you're in a holy relationship with the Creator, according to the Torah. Now, what do you want to do with that? So, as a Jew, I can keep Shabbat, I can keep the Sabbath, and I could not ever think about God. I could do none of this, and I'd be okay. I wouldn't be doing anything wrong. It's all right. I don't feel that way. I'm not born for that, but that's in terms of the law, in terms of the structure, that's true. So you have your bottom line minimum, and we all are allowed to learn, and we're all allowed to, adapt more slowly. We're all human beings where God loves us. God loves you. It's the truth. And we need to know that in our bones and in ourselves, because we've been very traumatized. And a new relationship is available. To step into it, we need to do some work. We need to learn some new things and to integrate them. But once a person is in that game through that gate, you do not have to be a Jew. If you're not born a Jew, the only way you can be a Jew is to actually convert according to Torah law. And that's not the easiest process, but it's absolutely available, and many people have done it. Um, so don't think that you're shut out, but you don't have to do that. You can be part. So once you're a Noahide, you can move to another level. There's a whole spectrum between. Okay, let's really get into it. A lot of people I'm reading on chats. I keep getting blindsided and shocked that I'll be on a chat, a political chat or whatever, or an awakening chat, not from a Torah perspective, and all of a sudden someone will come up with the Jewish banker thing, or they called me a goy, so now they all think we're inferior. They want to kill us. They say we're like pig, all this stuff. So I just want to let you know that goy means nation, and the Jewish nation is called Goy Echad Ba'aretz, a unique nation because we accept the divine commandments. So the word is intrinsically doesn't mean anything like that, but it can be used derogatorily sometimes. Obviously, some people think Jew is a derogatory word, which I find incredibly shocking, but it's the way it's been. But also on the spectrum, Noahide, let's say, is step 2. Goy would be step 1. So what does a goy mean in the negative sense? I just told you that that goy is also can be the most extremely positive. It means nation. It means a nation. But what step 1 is, you're in opposition to the divine mission. You're against the divine mission. You're taking a stance, and it's the opposite of what God wants you here for. So that's called a goy. That's a really in that spectrum. Step 2 is Noahide. You're not doing that. You want to be part. You want to do what God wants. So you learn a little bit about it and you take it on, and now you're Noahide. You want to move forward, okay? You're allowed to. You're allowed to move forward and progress in your spiritual relationship with God, and you are kosher and holy and beloved. It says, I believe in the Gemara, I'm not sure, the Talmud, that a non-Jew who learns Torah is considered like the high priest. Why? Because it's out of choice. It's out of love. It's the love relationship that's open to humanity now. So when it came to the law relationship, that was the Jewish people took that on. It was not easy. It's still not easy. And that is a possibility for those who want to go all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other. You can convert kosher, like they say, according to the law, and then you're part of the Jewish people. That has to be very well thought out, because we do not want anyone being part of the Jewish people who's going to be doing things that are against the law, because then we are diminishing. We're all considered, it says, Kol Yisrael Ravim Zelazeh, we're all judged. We're in it collectively. So we want, if people join us in that, we want them to lift us up, not take us down. So think carefully about it, but it's totally open to those who do, and might even become easier, because it is like there's something about destiny here that I'm not going to go into it right now. But meanwhile, in between Noahide and a convert or a born Jew, there's this whole spectrum that's called ger. A ger means a wanderer. Abraham was the first ger. A ger means someone who's in a land not of theirs. So if you're born one way and you're moving forward into another way, you are essentially a ger. A ger also is used for the word convert. So you have to know how to apply words in Hebrew. You really have to know, or they're meaningless. So when you have a desire to get closer to God through the Torah, when you feel a love, even if it's not fully conscious or fully activated, but when you feel a love or an affinity to the Torah, to the Jewish people, to Israel, and to the Jewish mission, you're on the path. You're on the path, on that spectrum. And anybody who does anything on that path, even even acknowledging that there's a God, and even wanting to do more of what God wants, you are actually helping to bring the awakening, and you're helping to bring Mashiach, the Messiah. There's no question about it. One act can change the world. One word can change the world. One thought can change the world. I take this directly from Maimonides, the Rambam, one of the codifiers of Jewish law. So the role of the Noahide is you are a prophetic phenomenon. You are you are doing the ultimate transformation, in that you're starting from a place you're starting from cultures that were essentially fighting against the Torah and the carriers of the Torah, oppressing, all those things. You're coming from that. That's the DNA, and you're taking that and you're becoming a supporter, a friend, in union with. Do you think that has no effect? That's a quantum effect. Quantum, that's the ultimate transformation. And transformation is what it's all about. Transformation means turning something to its opposite or revealing the potential in the blockage, in the challenge. That's called transformation. And that's what I mean when I say, are you the victim of your story or the hero of it? If you're doing transformation, you're the hero of it. So you see, there's more than one Noahide saying hi to each other here. Many of my students are in this category. Some of them, are not, and everybody's welcome as long as they sincerely wish to learn and to grow. Anyway, but that's how a Noahide can help, by everything that you do, by joining the mission, by being a hero of your story, by transforming, by learning Torah, by sharing Torah, by helping the people in your culture, whether through pray, you know them, right? You know you know where you're coming from. You know what happens behind closed doors. What do you want to do about that? Can you help enlighten somebody a little bit? Can you help create peace and unity and understanding where there wasn't? That's totally helping to bring Mashiach. Totally helping with awakening. So there's something here, there's some mystery here, to be very frank with you, something I wonder and think about a lot. I ask myself the question, how is this, when I try to imagine how it's going to happen and what my role could be, how do we change enemies into allies? How do we change, how do we each be ourselves in integrity and yet find that deeper union that has to come through the Torah? The Torah is here to bring peace to the world. The Torah is divine consciousness, divine will, divine wisdom, divine presence. The Torah is for everyone, especially the mystical Torah. It transforms by its nature. It can give you access to God, intimacy with God. So how do we see that happening? And if you can ask yourself a question like that as a Jew or as a non-Jew or as a Noahide or somebody who's just learning, somebody who's just curious, I never heard of this before, you can ask yourself, what does the world have to look like to be that redeemed world, to be that awakened world? What is the role of God? Because without God, it doesn't happen. God is the unifying core of all. God is the higher order. God is the source. God is the cause. God is, God is all of that. But God's not just outside of us. God is deep in our core. So how do we access that, both in our consciousness and our emotions and in our relationships and in ourselves? And how do we bring that to people to whom which we are connected? You have people, you're a spiritual searcher, and you got to where you are from where you were. Keep moving forward. All of that is helping to fulfill prophecy, messianic prophecy. But also think about the people in your past. Who maybe that do I know that might listen to a call from, Shifra or Rabbi this or Rabbi that or anyone else? Who might want to study something with me, or who might I have a conversation with? And ask a few questions. Questions open the mind, like I said at the beginning. Questions put your higher mind on search and receive. So learning to ask good questions is a phenomenal tool. Anyway, I hope I've answered. If I haven't answered this enough, then feel free to let me know, and I'll try to answer it more. Is it okay, cohesive, to create true space between myself and toxic systems as I learn to disengage from negative energy? I don't want to be accused of being unforgiving, but need space to heal. I'm assuming that means culture, the people in them. I'm assuming this has to do with people. So this is a very good question. And it is sometimes not only okay, but imperative to separate yourself in order to, sometimes you don't come back, it depends on if the other people are growing. But when we don't separate ourselves, one of the features of exile is that our hearts are reactive, our egos are reactive. So when things happen and we're hurt and we have that trauma alive in it, and the people in our lives have trained us to expect them to be the way they are, and we've trained them to expect us to be the way they are, and we're all tangled up in a system, we can't tell what's us and what's them. We don't have that freedom, and we must have that freedom. Freedom is redemption. Redemption literally means liberation. Freedom from slavery, right? Look at the redemption from Egypt, freedom from slavery. And it's a fractal. It happens on every level. So oftentimes you do have to separate yourself, take a step back. You can do it kindly in most cases. In some cases you can't, but you have every right to do that if what you want is deeper truth and healing. Now, the way to do that as kindly as possible, not to hurt people, is to connect. It's be a little beyond the scope of, this is a training in itself, but to, in a nutshell, ask yourself what you truly want. What do you want? What do you want to happen? Why do you want to separate? Because you want, I need to separate in order to, what is that thing that you want? And get in touch with that desire as in as real a way as possible, what would it feel like if you had that, self-expression or freedom to grow, or a new opportunity, or I don't know what you want, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. But what would it feel like? You want to take it from the consciousness down into the heart. I actually have this with me. Hang on a sec. You're gonna be seeing this again. You've seen this before, maybe you'll be seeing it again at Thursday, the Thursday workshop. Sign up at the link below. Invite your friends who want your friends to have more consciousness. Invite them. Invite them. I don't know why people don't do this a lot more. You don't have to be alone. We're all a reflection of the five, mostly of the five, or to a large degree, the five people we spend the most time with. If they think you're a mad person and they're completely judgmental and closed, don't invite them. But if they don't understand, you can say, hey, you want to come to a workshop with me? See how it goes? You want to listen to a live stream? Get a sense of what I'm into? Why not you talk to the people in your life? That's leadership. That's another way to actually facilitate the messianic process. Every human being is going to have to get there. Who are you in the matter? Who are you in the matter? So when we have a don't want, just really quickly, in the left side of the chart in the red, we're reactive to it. It causes all kinds of drama, rationalizations. It causes trauma. It causes all these emotions. Okay, all that stuff. So what you want to do is move over here. You have to start asking yourself questions. What would give me pleasure? What do I really desire? Pleasure and joy, desire. And then automatically, when you know what you want, your brain on search and receive will start downloading, so to speak, the ways that you can do that. If what you want is separation, but you want it out of peace and love, so you put your brain in the question on search and receive, and you download strategies to do it if necessary. You can ask for help. So that's my answer to that question. It is totally not only okay, but necessary for you to be more of who you are. That's the awakening. How you do it, to do it out of desire or out of reactivity, that's a choice. How you do it is going to depend on which side of that chart you're coming from. So that's a choice. That's part of the work, and that's crucial. We don't ever want to do damage unnecessarily, but we do need to grow, and we do need to be free. Okay, now that could look very different in different situations. So please don't take that as a blanket, like do whatever you want. That's not what I'm saying. But know what you want, and make sure it's coming from the right place. Get advice if you need to, and then implement that, manifest that in ways that cause the most new potential and healing and the least destruction. Now, sometimes people have to get hurt, but are they going to get hurt because you're screaming at them and throwing a pot at their head? Or are they going to get hurt because you're telling them some hard truths out of connection and love? So that's a choice. What do you have here? I've worked through my own personal limiting beliefs and now feel ready to share, but I felt resistance from others against my message. How do you stay neutral and not stuck to a desired outcome? Yeah, that's complicated. I feel like that takes more of a conversation, because so here are 2 questions. Which people are you sharing your message with? Is your message right for some people and you need to change the people? As I had that situation for a long time. I had burning, like in with passion for certain kinds of messages. And even though marketing people will tell you have to see what the people want, really you can only give over what you love, right? In an effective way. And that's our purpose anyway. So you can find out what language your people are using. And also you choose the people. Who is your avatar? Like I know that most of my children, perhaps with an exception or 2, are not candidates for receiving my message. There are reasons for that. I know that some, spiritual people are, some are not. Some Jews are, some are not. Some Noahides are, some are not. So what is it that I have a burning desire, a burning passion for? Who are the people who are most likely to benefit from what I might share? What is the language that I can use in order to convey or transmit what it is that I want to share with them? And then, how am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? How are they going to know about me? And that is a process of connecting. I mean, Shara Yichud, the core text that we learn in school for spiritual empowerment, describes this relationship. it's actually an analogy to the relationship between man and God, or the Torah and humans, but it applies everywhere. When you want to transmit, real teaching is a transmission. Real sharing is a transmission. It's not just information. It's designed, it's meant to actually move an insight or an empowerment, um, a power, something from the giver to the receiver, an awareness, something. So, without going into all the details of how that works, for somebody to transmit something, they need to be transmitting it to someone. And that someone has to at least be open enough to have a question. If the person has no question or no interest, like if I walk into Walmart and start orating, I'm very unlikely to have my, to get very far, right? If I am in an intimate spiritual class of people who want to hear me, then I can ask myself, or I can ask them, what's disturbing you? That's one reason I'm asking you to ask questions. So what's on your mind? What do you want to know more? When you want to know something, then you're open and you're listening. So the teacher, whatever, the facilitator, the healer, the practitioner, whatever, must make a connection with the person to whom they want to transmit some kind of potential, whether it's informational or healing or otherwise. And to do that, you have to basically choose your avatar, and it's going to be somebody more like you, maybe like you used to be. So it's going to be somebody that you relate to from the inside, who will relate to you if you phrase it, if you're good enough at what you do, and that's a learning process, and that's fine. It's meant to be. And so, how do you stay neutral and not stuck to a desired outcome? So it's not worth it. That's a learning process also. And I don't know what you mean by a desired outcome. If you mean you want those people to listen to you, I would suggest giving it up. Or let's say, um, you take the long path and listen to them. So when you find out what's on their hearts and you can be there with them in their own language, slowly you will build relatedness and trust. And then there's usually an opening to help to bring the person along, depending on where they are. But if you're talking about doing something as an offering, a class or a series of classes or whatever, you're you're wasting your energy to try to hit your low, what do they call it? No, your most difficult customers. You want to start with the people who will relate to your message the most. They will help you refine your message. You can literally ask them, can you please give me feedback? What worked, what didn't work? What turned you off? When did you get distracted? Was there anything that hit you? So that's the methodology in a very small nutshell. There's a lot more to say about it. How do you stay neutral? You can't really stay neutral. You will get triggered. We all do. We have egos. We have desires. We feel rejected, or we want love. We feel disappointed. We feel like failures. So again, that's where this comes in. This is the process of going from a trigger, which we must have. We're here to transform darkness into light. Again, are you the hero of your story or the victim of it? The hero transforms. So if you're here to transform, then what you want to do is just a vehicle for it. You will get triggered. We're designed to get triggered. We are designed to get triggered. But what do we do with it? Who do you want to be in that matter? So if you learn this process, the workshop will help. Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern, 3 hours. Be present. Share with your friends. Sign up at the link below. It's free. If you want to be able to move from this side to this side, you're going to have to learn how to do that. You're going to have to master it. And the first thing in mastery is the consciousness level. It's always the frame. It's always the context in which you're moving. So if you accept as a reality the framework that your challenges are here to bring out more of the miraculous powers of your soul. So when you get triggered, you don't try to suppress it to neutrality. You say, whoa, what's going on? What's being triggered? What am I really feeling? When's the first time I ever felt that in my life? Where are the beliefs about this that maybe I can shift? What do I really want to experience? And there are many, many different ways that we approach this. But in general, the trigger is always here for the transformation. So instead of trying to say, and forgive me if I'm misunderstanding you or not completely understanding you, but instead of trying to stay neutral, stay passionate, be the hero, keep moving forward, keep revealing, keep awakening, right? It's about the awakening. So that's my answer, best I can do in a short time. Okay, I see there are more questions. We can't stand too long. I did see one on the first one. I said first come, first serve. So I'm going to the one I got on email next. Would it be possible to answer the question why it's not gaiva, which means arrogance, to manifest? So why is it not arrogance to manifest? So we can see here that the person asking the question, and that person's not the only one, who believes that manifesting, that trying to make things happen that we want, if you're a spiritual, God-serving, God-believing person, there's something wrong with that it's coming from arrogance. So again, in a nutshell, that was true in a previous phase. Things have changed. And I want you to look at our evolutionary process as a collective and as individuals, but as primarily as a collective. Humanity is evolving. Imagine that humanity is all of humanity, every human that ever lived and ever will live is like one cell in this giant body that's alive, that's got a cosmic soul in it. It's God. And it's evolving. It's growing. It's not even saying, but it's growing. It's maturing. So you can definitely easily compare this to a human. It's not an accident either. Everything is a living analogy in this universe. The more you see that, the more amazing it's going to be. But compare that to the process of a human. A human has an evolutionary process. I mean, one human, born, conceived, it goes in the womb, that's one stage. Then it goes to the birth, that's the second stage. Then it's a newborn, that's a third stage. It's nursing, that's a fourth stage. It's a toddler, that's a fifth stage. Okay, where are we aiming? All of that those are different stages, but let's say from nursing to through 10, 11, 12, the main goal of the parent, besides keeping the child safe and feeling loved, is to educate the child that you have responsibilities in the world. You have to have values. You have to listen. You can't be a wild creature. Hopefully in a very loving way that, brings the message home. But it's like, there is something. I was taught actually by a very talented teacher, not just me personally, but he says you have to teach your children. Sometimes you have to say to them, because mommy said so, because daddy said so. Why? Because we as humans there's a higher consciousness, there's a higher order. We need to be able to say, because God, you do it because God said so. Don't steal because I told you not to, Don't kill because I said no. And that is the way one needs to talk as an educator or parent or creator to an immature being. So a parent, when the child is immature, the brain and the heart of the child are not mature enough yet to be able to internally understand why. To really, the concept of internalized, inside-out values, it's not there yet. There's a maturation process, an evolutionary process, and it has to move in its appropriate pattern. So there are times you cannot teach a 3-year-old. Voltaire. I never learned Voltaire. It's bad or good. I'm a philosopher. You can't teach a 3-year-old what you can teach a 12-year-old. You cannot teach a 12-year-old what you can teach a 20-year-old. You cannot teach somebody who's sitting in school because they have no choice the same way you could teach them if they're paying you because they really want to know. It's, again, all about the question. So there is a certain piece, a certain phase in this evolutionary process of a human being where there's a huge shift. So I described shifts from conception, gestation, birth, but all of those were in the same direction. At the stage of adolescence, there is an inversion. So the shift isn't just, it's happening this way, now it's happening this way. The shift is so strong that it goes from one pole to another. So that shift is what was right before is now wrong. What was healthy before is now toxic. So the healthy child will trust and listen to his parents, her parents, till a certain point, and because the parents said so. Because I trust my mom. We're Democrats, we're Republicans, because that's what we are. There's that identification. But at some point, that becomes very unhealthy, and there needs to be a letting go of an old way, an unwiring of an old way. I'm not a child anymore. Sometimes it's really turbulent. Okay, it's always risky, but it's part of the divine design. The end goal being that instead of doing the right thing because mommy said so or daddy said so, that child has internalized the right thing, sometimes because of the school of hard knocks, sometimes because they're a deep thinker and they had the freedom to think through that. I'm talking about freedom. Or whatever other way, but that's the process, the way it has to happen. We are at the stage, we're actually a little bit past the stage now in our collective evolution where that shift is meant to be made. So we have had a relationship with God out of divine plan. It's part of the process. It was right. from a whole evolutionary perspective, even if hard, we had to learn to do what we were told, because if we did what we thought, what we felt, the world would be a place of barbarism. In some ways, it still is. It would not be sustainable. But through this long process, what's happening now, and this is part of the awakening, this is amazing, you guys. What's happening now is that ordinary people are realizing deep spiritual things just because they make sense. Not because someone told me. I shouldn't hurt anyone because that's not the world I want to live in. That's not nice. That's not good. That no. So nobody has to be watching you to keep you from stabbing someone. I'm assuming. I hope that was not always the case. And I mean, that's a crude example, but there's so many examples. Nobody has to be watching you, hopefully, for you not to steal something. And if that is not true, then work on that, because that's one of the 7 Noahide laws. That's the basis. That's the foundational basic. That's basic for an inhabitable world where people can trust each other, right? What if people go around stealing? Can you trust them? No. Then it's dog eat dog. Is that awakened? No. That's like little kids screaming over the truck or the candy, biting each other. That is not a divine world. That is not awakened. So, whereas in the past we had to suppress our ego-based desires, our desires to have things well, health, success, a big house, whatever it is, because our physical conflicted with our spiritual, and the spiritual had to dominate the physical enough that the physical would start to quiet down, get under control, and listen and grow. That growth has been done enough that now, and I'm not making this up, I get this from the Rebbe and other sources, but now it is the case that we as spiritual people, if we are, mature enough, can be trusted with a different relationship with God and with wealth. Wealth doesn't just mean money, but the Rebbe specifically says wealth. Wealth also means holy wealth. It means Torah and mitzvahs. It means love. It means hope. But we are able to be now we have moved into a phase where the physical and the spiritual are not meant to be in opposition to each other. They're meant to realign and merge, and each enhance the other. It's like the adolescent. Now, when the adolescent reaches a certain state of maturity, the adult, or he's mature, so now what he wants and what's good for him are more aligned. Are they completely aligned? No, but that's a process. That's called maturation. That's also called awakening. So we are in a state now where, and I can't explain this more in this time frame. Feel free to ask again on Thursday if you want to. But underneath everything you want is your purpose. It doesn't always mean that your purpose is in exactly the form that you're focusing on it right now. But there is godliness and purpose in everything that we desire, because desire is the highest faculty of the soul, and it is easily possible for us to start to get in touch with that now. So start from, you said everything starts with the frame. Start from the frame that everything about you is by divine design, and everything about you is here to facilitate awakening and redemption, because that's the truth. Okay, I said that Torah is for everyone. How do you explain that the Orthodox saying it's only for the Jews, that non-Jews must only be Noahide? So I will explain it by saying that that there were certain values, stances, philosophies, beliefs that were critically important and appropriate throughout these 2,000 years of persecution and exile. It was very dangerous, even threat of life, to teach Torah to somebody who wasn't Jewish, even to teach Torah to somebody who was Jewish. Literally, people were burned at the stake for that, even for not teaching. It's pretty horrendous, right? So it makes sense that from an appropriately defensive boundary, that would be the case. And also, when everyone's your enemy, you don't give your power into the hands of an enemy. And that feeling still remains among some people, although it's less. So this is the switch. This is part of this inversion I'm talking about, or the switch in adolescence. We're in our adolescence as Jews as well. We're grown up enough to be able to start to rely on our own awareness from the inside. God wants that for us and from us. But we have to make the switch. And this is not widely being taught, and it needs to be. So again, invite your friends. It needs to be. It needs to be. We're not rising to our role. We're meant to be a light to the nations. And what does it mean to be a light? It doesn't mean that you stand on a pedestal and somebody looks at you and worships you. God forbid. It means that through your light and connecting to the other person's potential light. You make a transmission and help them turn the lights on in themselves. That's what it means to be a light into the nations, because everybody's here to serve the one God. And everybody's here to create intimacy with the one God. And everyone is here to do that through the Torah. And everyone is here to be part of the mission and bring peace and heaven on earth to the world. We are in that. Who are you in the matter? So it is an older belief. It's not that old. It comes from really good place for really good reasons, but it is hard to change. And it's true also that there are those people, who is your avatar? My avatar is not somebody who wants to convert me. Right? If I know that that's the case with a person, they're not allowed in my school. I won't learn with them. I can bless them, appreciate them as people, but I'm not giving this light to somebody who is going to try to use it to twist it, right? I don't get that a lot, which is awesome, but it has happened that people have wanted that. And when I know about it, I say, you're beautiful, but this is not for you. So know your customer, on whatever level we're talking about, even if it's your child or your spouse or your friend or whatever. But things have changed, and we need to be with the change. That's awakening. That's the awakening part of it. Things have changed. They are changing a lot more. We need to move with that. And it is not a movement of step by step at this point. It's a movement of adolescence where you let go of everything you thought you knew, zero it out, just to the level that's necessary, and start to activate your own light. You do that again. You don't do that just by wishing or fantasy or I don't care or I'm God. It's not, at all what we're talking about. We're saying to learn divine consciousness from the blueprint and to work with your own inner desires in a way that you bring them out in the deepest, holiest level that will please God and please you, where there's an assumption in the frame that there's an alignment between what you're born desiring and what you're born to reveal. So manifestation isn't self-centered and I just want the big car bigger than yours. That's not what we're talking about. Manifestation is like, I feel expanded when I'm in a beautiful house. The Torah wants us to be in a beautiful home. It talks about it a lot. So, and many other things. But for what reason? Are you trusted? Can you be trusted with these manifestation powers? And one of the issues is that because we are still in the old relationship, those of us who theoretically are more committed to be part of this geula process, this redemption process, but we're still in the old traumatized, victimized, not good enough, God doesn't want me to have good, I shouldn't even want anything relationship. How can you be a leader like that? Not possible. Not possible. So we need to be trusted. We need to work to align ourselves. We don't be perfect. We just have to be sincere and growing from the right sources, from the right, in the right ways. Making mistakes, but not on purpose. Okay? Making mistakes, learning from them. And then we can be trusted with more and more of the miraculous. Okay, we're going to end very shortly. Let me just see. These are great questions. The background noise is louder than me. That's horrible. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let's do one more question. The best way to clear up klipot. Okay, that's a little esoteric. How do I get rid of this? I can find where I put that on the screen. Okay. Okay, so klipot the word klipa means shells. So klipot are shells, literally, like a eggshell, like a nutshell. But in the spiritual sense, klipot is the term that Hasidus, authentic Kabbalah, uses to describe spiritual impurities that cover over holiness. So there are different levels of klipot, of these impurities. The simplest one being that physical things cover up their source, right? So it's a kind of klipa, it's a kind of a shell that covers up the source. The body covers the soul. Does that mean it's bad? No, there's a level of klipa that is neutral, and you can use it for the good or you can use it for the bad. There are some kinds of klipot that are much deeper and much harder to use for the good. Those we're meant to stay away from. Like, don't elevate murder, just get rid of it. But, a person who's sophisticated enough can go into the inner impulse for murder. Where's it coming from? I feel small and I need to wipe you out because when I look at you, I hate myself and therefore I have to hate you, and work with that. That's something that's available for awakened people that wasn't before. So the best way to me, Tikkun Klali is a series of prayers of psalms that's promoted very much in, at least in the Breslov movement and certain movements, but streams of Judaism. But in my opinion, the best way to elevate, to clear klipot, is to use things to the best that you can to express godliness. Now we're meant to use things. There was a point when we had to stay away from things. There's always at times when we need to like learn from our mistakes or even make amends for things, which is, that's more the meaning of the tikkun, the rectification. But overall, the prime directive is to use every single thing that we come into contact with, an opportunity to speak to someone, my computer, my body, my desires, my resources, my prayer, everything, to reveal not only God, but God's love, because God loves us. And that had to be hidden. It actually says in the Torah about the time of Gullus, which was so achingly agonizing in indescribable ways, and so long and bitter. Haster aster panim, I will hide my face. But God's not hiding his face no more. If we're used to looking down and, there's all these like law of attraction, like movies tell you stories about how people, like when people first saw boats, they didn't know there was such a thing, so the boats were right in front of them, they didn't see them. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that it's true that we don't see opportunities, we don't see the deeper realities that are right here, right now. We don't see our own potential or someone else's potential. We don't see the potential for a completely transformed and miraculous, and I mean that literally, relationship with God, until we know it's there and allow for it and start searching. Remember, the mind, search and receive, the higher mind. So that's really the core foundation for awakening. And I encourage everybody to get into it. And I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. Please, I want to say, do me a favor. You're really doing yourself a favor, but let's do us all a favor and share this video. Share the video. It's a little enough thing to do. Share the invitation for the Thursday event. If you can't come, we'll be leaving replays up until through Sunday night, Monday morning. Give people enough of a chance. Share everything. Let's see if we can create a bit of a movement. A movement starts with one more person than was there before, right? A movement starts with one more person who came out of curiosity, saw a possibility, and brings one more person. That's the foundation for our movement. So let's see if you can be that one person. And 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals a movement. Anyway, lots of love to you guys. See you on Thursday. Take care.